Meet the Hustle family. Two sons made it to the big leagues, Charlie Hustle, aka Pete Rose, and his younger brother Johnny Hustle, aka Not Manny Machado. Charlie Hustle set the standard for how baseball ideally should be played. You sprinted at first base after a walk, you ran over catchers in meaningless games, you kept your hair in a crew cut, you also placed bets on MLB contests and had allegedly illicit relationships with minors, but we digress. Charlie Hustle was the embodiment of the old school work ethic, in which a man labored without rest, never called in sick, never dogged it, ever. As you can tell by how he phrased this, we obviously have some issues with this methodology. According to Manny Machado, Johnny Hustle runs hard down the line on every ball he hits. He'll slide into first base if the play demands it. He'll not stand and admire long drives that don't become home runs. Machado was clear in an interview in 2018 that he was not in fact Johnny Hustle, thereby clearing up a rumor that no one was spreading. As if to prove he wasn't Johnny Hustle in the World Series, Machado moseyed out of the box in Game 3, turning a possible double into a single. Oops. Here's the rub. Many have tried to paint Ronald Acuña Jr. with that same brush, because the year after Machado's lack of hustle became an issue in the postseason, Acuña basically got caught doing the same kind of things. In August 2019, he was benched for not running hard out of the box on a ball he thought was a homer. Lesson learned, people thought. He was just 21 years old and still growing as a leader. But then he did it again in Game 1 of the NLDS, in a game in which the Braves ended up losing by a single run. He hit a ball off the wall and right, but he didn't bust it out of the box, and thus didn't make it to second with no outs, again hurting the Braves' chance of victory. Yet, over the entire season, Acuña had clubbed 41 home runs to go along with 38 stolen bases. He was one of the most electric talents in the game, but, like Machado, he seemed prone to thinking that all-out hustle was for suckers. Yet, is it fair to criticize Acuña for not being a hustle player in the same way that we were criticizing Machado? Listen, is he Pete Rose? Of course not. But the thing is, he didn't have to be, or doesn't have to be. Before we get more into that, I want to ask you a question. Can you actually watch the games for your favorite MLB team with zero issues? If you've purchased MLB TV in the past, blackout restrictions have probably given you issues at some point. So, how do you get around this? Well, you can do so easily using today's sponsor, Unlocator, and for cheaper than a cup of Starbucks coffee every month. Unlocator offers two primary services, their VPN and their Smart DNS. Their VPN is pretty straightforward, giving you online security in the form of concealing your IP and encrypting your traffic. The package with said VPN also automatically includes their Smart DNS, which doesn't even require any software installation. The service routes location requests through Unlocator's infrastructure, allowing you to appear in the desired location for streaming without encountering restrictions. This means it not only works for MLB TV, but for any streaming service, period. The VPN plus DNS package clocks in at just $4.99 if you commit for 2 years, or $6.99 for a year. The DNS service on its own comes in at just $2.99 for 2 years or $3.99 for a year. And now with code MTC, you can also get 3 months completely free on top of this when you purchase a yearly or multi-year package. Think about it, you're already paying $30 a month to use MLB TV. Why not throw in a service that allows you to actually utilize the dang thing? For more info, go to the link in either the pinned comment or description. Again, that's code MTC at either the pinned comment or description for 3 months off a yearly or multi-year package with Unlocator. Now, back to our video. Maybe Acuña isn't Charlie or Johnny Hustle. Despite this, however, there's no doubt that Acuña plays the game of baseball hard, engaging more in what might be best termed as selective hustle instead of outright. I can just see a lot of the older fans saying, "What? No way, there's only one kind of hustle." The old-timey baseball gods say that you go hard all the time, giving 110% in every play. Baseball reality, however, is far different than this rosy expectation. Maybe Ronald Acuña Jr. can help us better understand the modern take on hustle, and how it factors functionally into the modern game. Because, you see, Ronald Acuña Jr. is not a prototypical hustle player. Well, that's okay, because he's nowhere near a lazy one. No one can dispute that Ronald Acuña Jr. had to fight hard to make it from La Sabana, Venezuela to NL MVP. La Sabana is a fishing village of 7,000 people tucked against the Caribbean Sea, not the easiest place to get to. But scout Roland Petit had seen Ronald Acuña Sr., who had signed with the Mets, and when he returned 20 years later, he saw a kid of 14 who looked like a potential big leaguer. This was, of course, Ronald Acuña Jr. 2 other scouts had seen him too, and when Acuña turned 16, Petit was willing to sign him for $100,000. In terms of an international signing bonus, however, that's a pretty paltry sum. Consider a couple of these names: Dermis Garcia, $3.2 million, or Jonathan Amundere, $1.5 million. The list goes on of 2014 signings who got paid big bucks and then flamed out. If you spend any amount of time at any extended spring training, you realize that many international signees have to fight just to get onto an affiliated team at any level. That's not even counting the Dominican Summer League too. The less you sign for, the harder it is to draw attention. But as soon as Hall of Fame manager Bobby Cox saw Acuña at the 2015 Fall Instructional League, he was blown away by the skill level. At some point, the cream rises to the top. After all, your signing bonus won't hit a curveball or swipe bags on back-to-back pitches. Acuña's ensuing rise was meteoric. He went from the Gulf Coast League to the Appalachian League when he was just 17. When he was 18, he broke his hand and only ended up playing in 42 games. But it was when he turned 19 that he became one of the best players in the world, leading the Braves to keep him down on the farm for basically just contractual reasons. He went from high A to AAA that season, and at each stop he tore up the league. At 19, he hit .344 in AAA with power, speed, and elite defensive potential. He was named the Minor League Player of the Year, and what's more, no one in baseball questioned whether Ronald Acuña Jr. hustled. At the time, his ability to chase down fly balls and make lightning throws to the bag, along with his laser line drives and pure hitting ability, gave him comps like Willie Mays or Ken Griffey Jr. Of course, as the 2018 season began, the Braves started Acuña Jr. off in AAA due to service time manipulation tactics, but when the Braves finally brought him up for the first time, Acuña went off en route to winning Rookie of the Year, hitting .293 with 26 bombs in his partial season, good enough for an OPS plus of 143. On the bases and on the field, Acuña went all out all the time. As a rookie, his fielding run value was 3, according to StatCast, and his range put him in the 83rd percentile, with an outs above average of 3 as well. That's at least partially because his average sprint speed was more than elite, in the 97th percentile. He improved to 6 defensive runs saved in 2019 and 4 in 2020 in an abridged season. His speed and arm strength remained at the highest levels of the game. Until mid-2021, he pretty much stayed right there. A very fast runner, among the fastest in baseball, with one of the strongest arms in the outfield, in the 98th percentile, whose range was above average. When you take all those factors and then combine them with his elite hitting peripherals, with exit velos and barrel rates in the top 2%, you had a baseball juggernaut. But there was still a huge event coming in the career of Acuña Jr. that would change the layout of his game entirely: the evisceration of his ACL. The question of fake hustle versus real hustle comes into clearer focus when we consider what happened to Acuña in July 2021. It was right before the All-Star game in which Acuña was the leading vote getter in the NL. He was hitting .283 with 24 homers and 17 steals, well on his way to another 30-30 or possibly even 40-40 season. Again, everything about Acuña at the time screamed hustle. He was still in the top 3% for speed in the game, he was in the 82nd percentile for fielding run value at 5, and his UZR per 150 was 7.2, the second best of his career. He still had one of the strongest arms in the game. He still was one of the best base runners in all of baseball. The bottom line is this: if Acuña wasn't a hustle player, he never would have been hurt the way he was. It was in the bottom of the 5th inning in a game against the Marlins, with Jazz Chisholm sending a shot into the right field corner. Acuña raced back, made a leaping try to catch, and landed awkwardly on his right knee. The result was a complete tear of his ACL. The question then became, would Acuña ever come back as the same player? He himself wondered that, and asked friends if he would ever play with the same force as he did. Stats gurus have studied the effect of ACL injuries on player performance, and there seems to be a noticeable negative impact on returning players. But thankfully, Acuña's situation was different because of his young age of 23. When someone who's 33 misses a year with that injury, there's likely already some regression coming because of age that the rehab would only exacerbate. Acuña vowed to come back, and he worked relentlessly to do so, returning to the lineup at the end of April 2022. At first, he was DHing exclusively, but starting June 2nd, he played every day in right field. His defensive numbers were, surprisingly for him, pretty grim. His fielding run value was -3 in the 26th percentile, and his OAA was -7 in the 6th percentile. His once elite sprint speed had also dipped into the 82nd percentile. But here's the thing, he wasn't really any slower than he used to be. He ended 2022 with 28 bolts, or times that he exceeded 30 feet per second on a competitive run. So, what was he not doing any more specifically to drive these numbers down? Well, he noticeably wasn't trying to beat out every 50-50 ground ball he hit, or was constantly diving the outfield. He wasn't trying to make those same leaping grabs into the wall. These facts might explain why his UZR 150 fell from 7.2 in 2021 to -1.2 in 2022. But there were other concerning things about that season as well. His batting average had fallen to .266. He stole 29 bases but got caught 11 times, a success rate of 72.5% that was below his career average. His slugging percentage dropped to .413, by far the lowest of his career. Pitchers were challenging him on first pitches, and he fell behind in counts consistently, so he walked less, hit fewer balls hard with a lower line drive rate. The bottom line is he was trying to adjust to the new reality of having a surgically repaired knee, of knowing when to turn it on and when to turn it off. In his first 2 seasons, he averaged 46 bolts. He revved his engine all the time and hauled ass. Damn the results. Acuña seemed to understand that he couldn't play that way again, or Braves management simply directed him not to. But the lingering question going into 2023 was, could Acuña Jr. ever be anywhere near the same player that he was before, or perhaps even better. After that 2021 injury, Fangraphs ran a Zips projection on Acuña's future numbers, and predicted that in 2023 he'd hit 270 with 40 homers and 27 steals, good for a 5.7 WAR. Those would be extremely impressive numbers for any player, ranking even above his own career best of 5.7 WAR set in 2019. In reality, Acuña's 2023 season would be earth-shattering. He started a brand new club, the 40-70, with 41 homers and 73 steals, utilizing baseball's new bigger bases and pickoff rules to his advantage whenever possible. On top of that, he had a blistering 337, not 275. He led the NL with the 168 OPS+. He led the majors with a 416 OBP. His WAR was 8.2. He was voted NL MVP, ranking as MLB's best player not from Japan. But there's always a catch. Was Acuña dogging it in the field too much? Was he not hustling on defense to save himself on offense? That's usually more of an NBA strategy than MLB, but the league is littered with players who burst onto the scene with incredible talent and huge numbers, only to have various injuries derail what could have been Hall of Fame careers. We've even discussed this phenomenon here on this channel recently. The name that comes up a lot specifically with Acuña as a comp is Eric Davis of the Cincinnati Reds, who was a freak athlete, a five-tool machine who could dominate the game in multiple ways. For example, in 1986, Davis almost started the 30-80 club with 27 homers and 80 steals. He followed that the next season with 37 homers and 50 swipes. On top of all of that, between 1987 and 1989, he also won 3 straight Gold Gloves playing center field. And that's probably what cost him the Hall of Fame. Davis played with reckless abandon, such as running into the ivy at Wrigley to make a game-saving catch in 1987. It broke his ribs, and he missed a chance to join the 40-40 club. His diving catches hurt wrists, knees, hamstrings, shoulders, and kidneys. He lacerated a kidney in the 1990 World Series making a diving catch, after homering off Dave Stewart in Game 1 to help lead the Reds to a sweep. Unfortunately, aside from all of his on-the-field injuries, he also battled through colon cancer during his career. What if Davis had dialed back the throttle in his early days? Well, his first manager was Pete Rose, so that clearly wasn't happening. What was equally clear is the fact that Acuña Jr. was definitely pulling up on his defense in 2023. His range run value was down to -8, but since his arm worth remained one of the strongest in the game at +5, his overall fielding run value was -3. Here's a play from the past season that captures how Acuña played D in 2023. Notice that Acuña got a late jump and then gave up on the ball. The catch probability was 35%, but Acuña didn't even get close, which for an athlete as gifted as he is a head scratcher. Until you think, that looks an awful lot like the play he got hurt on in 2021. Precisely, Acuña isn't going to risk missing another year to make a catch in the first inning. Those days are over. Same with this play. Acuña could have dove. But why? Braves were winning in the 7th against a bad team. That's exactly the kind of play the Braves don't want Acuña to dive on. Be smart. Know the situation. Here's a breakdown of Acuña's defense from last season. Basically what this scatter plot shows is that Acuña was making the plays that he should make, but wasn't risking injuries to make the plays that require him laying out after going after a line drive. We know he still has the speed to do so, because last season he still registered 18 bolts. His overall speed, however, was in the 67th percentile, same as his 6'3" teammate, third baseman Austin Riley, who himself had 0 bolts last season. Basically, Ronnie could still run at the same speeds as the fastest runners in the game, but chose to do so selectively that his average was brought down to that of a corner infielder. Before his injury, Acuña had saved 15 defensive runs for his career. After the injury, he saved -2 runs in 2 seasons. Basically, his defense had cost the Braves runs. His UZR 150 before the injury was above average too, but afterwards it fell into consistently negative territory. Same for OAA, 3 before the injury, and a staggering -15 after. Again, the Braves have almost certainly coached him to play this way intentionally. Even when healthy, Acuña was probably not going to win a Gold Glove, and his incredible arm made up for many deficiencies he had as an outfielder, so why risk his elite offense now? Maybe it is time to revisit what Machado said, "I'm not Johnny Hustle." Hustle itself is a term that comes with some real baggage. Often, players who lacked hustle were those who weren't white. Those players got on by natural ability, while white players had to scratch and claw for every scrap they got. That racial stereotype persists to some degree. Maybe it's time to retire the negative use of that term for good. No one gets to the big leagues these days without a lot of hustle and drive. The competition is simply too intense, and the global nature of the game makes it impossible to phone it in, at least successfully. I'm looking at you, Anthony Rendon. You need to put in the hours, the sweat and sacrifice, and the rehab when your body breaks down. To say Acuña isn't hustling because his defensive metrics have fallen is to be ignorant of the larger point. He just doesn't see it as worth it, and his team doesn't either. So why should we as fans judge so harshly? After all, was it thrilling to watch Eric Davis dive into a brick wall? I'm sure it was amazing, but he missed 17 of the last 27 games of a season in which he could have gone 40-40. Acuña put up a 40-70 last year, avoiding those types of plays. It's years like that that's going to get Acuna to Cooperstown, not these meaningless diving catches here and there. So let's not use hustle as a judgment, let's use heart. Does Ronald Acuña Jr. play the game with passion, with intensity? How about we watch him hit a baseball 121.2 miles per hour? That was the hardest hit ball last season. A human can't do that unless they're completely invested in their craft. Remember, he can do that while swiping 73 bases, and batting over .330, and leading his team to 104 wins. Baseball needs Ronald Acuña Jr. to keep playing the same way he played last season, and baseball fans need to cut him some slack if that means he doesn't hustle on every play quite as hard as he could. Now, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing, it really helps the channel, and checking out this playlist for other essay content just like this. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.